How you doing tonight? It's IB Nation Sports Talk. It is Mailbag night. We're off. We're rolling. It's Vince D'Addario. It's Sean Stiers. I'm just going to tell you right away, we've got a heart out tonight because Vince has got birthday celebration plans for his oldest
That's
offspring.
right. Supposed to be running a track meet today, and it got canceled because of the weather. Not that he'd be able to run anyway. And
Weather?
so,
What? It's like
wind chill. I mean, for a track meet,
okay.
So
Yeah.
they canceled it a couple of days ago. So
Okay.
I think they were.
I was gonna say the sunshine again here. I don't know, but I
It
can
is
understand
sunshiny.
that.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
sunshiny. But these things go usually after the sun goes down, and then it gets a little nippy. You
Right.
know. So
There's going to be a pre NCAA women's tournament press conference tomorrow morning. And Neil Ivey is going to address the media in the morning. 11:05 is when it is slated to begin. And from what I understand, we'll get some clarification on Olivia Miles at that point. So
that's gonna shape the way I would fill out my bracket. Let's put it that way. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, depending on what they say. If she's good to go, then then that goes one way. If she's not good to go, that goes another. That's what I'm saying.
That's very true. That's very true.
Information is key. I mean, it just is. So
it's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Bring your questions because it's mailbag night. Hit us up. It's time to go. We got a couple questions ready to go. We need clarification on Tommy Gunn's question. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Wow. I was supposed to understand that? Are you kidding? Wow. Okay.
All right. We'll get to that here in just a second. Hit the like button. In the meantime, smash that like button. Boost us up a little bit.
That's right.
Give us a little bit of help here on Irish Breakdown. And of course, subscribe, rate, review. Follow us on your podcast platform. Subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform. Don't just go there and download it. Subscribe to it so you get automatic downloads. That helps out Irish Breakdown immensely. We appreciate it.
Get them all.
That's right. Do you want to start with this Tommy Guns thing? Or do you want to go with something less complicated?
It was a very outside the box way of asking, basically. Well, throw it up. Okay.
All right, here it is. Here it is. So your prediction on the number of planes that will be able to land in South Bend once the new ND80S 05/20 takes the field. And we're like, huh? And so then he said the explanation, where did it go? There it is. ND80S 05/20 stands for Notre Dame Aerial Defense System 05, Cam Hart /20, Benjamin Morrison. Now it makes a little bit more sense. And I think he put the over-under at 25.5.
Okay. It's like 28.5 receptions. Is that what we're basically saying? Like total for the whole year?
I still don't know.
Anybody that is guarding them. Look, I don't know where I would put the over-under because I have no idea what that would look like, okay? Here's what I will say. Notre Dame will have one of the top five corner combinations in the country. And if the safeties come to play, if things can work out in the safety, with everything that's transpired over the last few days, if the safeties can pan out, then Notre Dame's gonna have a really, really good secondary. And I was
wondering how you were going to go with that. Were you going to call it corner group, secondary?
Yeah,
exactly.
Corners. I think
clarify a little bit.
I think Notre Dame's got some of the best corners in the country, and they've got one of the best corner coaches in the country, and even the depth at corner. Because if you're thinking about Morrison and Hart and Mickey and Lewis at the moment, and what that's going to look like that's some serious depth too.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame's going to be really good shape from a corner standpoint. Safety's still a bit of a question mark. I think Xavier Watts is going to be really, really good at safety, no doubt. What's that other safety position look like? Is it going to be Ramon Henderson, a combination, DJ Brown, the new kid that's coming in from Oklahoma State? I think he's going to be more of a nickel.
Harper.
Yep, yeah. Harper. I think he's gonna be more of a nickel.
But that you throw him into the mix, with at nickel with what you're talking about with the other two guys, Hart and Morrison, as the outside cornerbacks, that just that only strengthens that group. I think it's going to be
Absolutely.
you're going to have to pick your poison. You're going to have to figure out which way you're going to go, because I
Right.
think we because of how good, Cam Hart started off slowly last year, but got much better as the season went on, and you had to throw the ball somewhere, and
Right.
Morrison was the benefactor of all those balls continuing to come his way and reeled in all those interceptions. So, hey, more power to him. Yeah, you're exactly right. The front part of the secondary is going to be really good. It's a matter of how things shape up at safety with questions, that we were talking about earlier this week with Hillman and all that stuff.
Agreed.
Another Benjamin asks, did I hear Jesse's birthday is Sunday? Because if so, that is my birthday. It is, and happy birthday to you, Benjamin. Jesse's birthday is this Sunday.
And how old is he going to be? Make me feel old here. How old is he going to be?
I wasn't going to say it. He is going to be 27 years old.
Oh, my gosh. Are you serious?
Yes. 27.
Oh, my gosh.
Seems like he just got done with high school.
I met him when he was like 8. So that's
true.
Wow. He's pushing 30. I don't know how I feel about that. Jeez,
Yes.
Pete.
Well, let's go ahead with the Brandon Hillman question. Why is he good enough academically to get a recent offer from Vanderbilt, BC, and Virginia, but won't get admitted to Notre Dame? Seems like admissions isn't working with the football program.
Because BC, Vanderbilt, and Virginia aren't Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just a fact. And, Notre Dame gave him the standard of what he needed to do. I mean, I don't place blame either way. I mean, he knew what he had to get in whatever class it was. It didn't happen.
Are they on trimesters? Do you know? It's just weird that it happened at this point.
The school that he's at?
Yeah. It's weird that it happened in this point in the calendar.
It does. That does seem weird. Yeah. I don't know what his high school is. If I'm being honest, I'm not 100% sure. I know, most obviously the semesters usually get over either before Christmas or just after Christmas. And then there's a period of time where, grades become finalized and, all of those different things. But that should have happened back in January, I would imagine. So
you would have thought.
Trimesters
that's why I say,
would
if they're on
sense.
trimesters, it would make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Trimesters would make sense. And, look, the football program is working with admissions and vice versa. I mean, everything was out in the open. I mean, not to us, but everything was out in the open the way I understood it. And it just didn't work out. And there's no hard feelings, obviously. It just is what it is. You have to set the standard someplace, right? And you can't keep moving the line like, hey, look, you need to do this and this and this to get in. It didn't happen. So you didn't get in. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you said. They told him what his grade needed to be. Grades. There were 2 classes, apparently. They told him what they needed to be. He didn't get them. From what I understand, there were 2. This is secondhand, but that's what it comes down to. He needed to get them, and he didn't get them. So, you can talk about, and we don't know what his entire transcript looked like and what classes they, any of this different kind of stuff, but you're right. There are certain standards, and you can't keep moving the bar, as much as you might want to get him in. Now, did the bar move for other people maybe in the basketball program a little bit more than a year ago? Yeah. So why that was not an issue, but this is, and it's, I don't know.
Well,
can't answer those questions.
You bring up the whole basketball situation, and the thing there is the grades on paper were what they needed to be.
That's fair. Even if they were changed before he got there.
I'll just say that the grades on paper were what they needed to be.
Right.
And I won't go any further than that. Well, I don't even work there anymore, so I don't care. But the grades were what they needed to be, and you can think what you want to think in that regard. And they don't use standardized test scores anymore. Like, that's not a thing anymore. And so that used to be the great equalizer. Like, everybody takes the same test and you can figure out what everybody, but they don't use those anymore. And so it's harder to have something that everybody does so that you have that great equalizer that just doesn't exist anymore for most schools, and especially during COVID. And that's the basketball situation from last time. Those were still COVID rules where standardized tests were thrown out the window and it didn't matter. And so while the standardized test was very, very, very poor, didn't matter. It just whatever the grade was on the sheet, here it is. Right. And, that was that. And so obviously in this situation, the grade on the sheet wasn't what it needed to be. And that's kind of just the way, that's where we're at. And it's not arrogant. It's, again, if Notre Dame wants to be an academic institution and they want to have, similar standards for regular students as they do for athletes, you've got to draw the line someplace. Somewhere the line has to be drawn, and this is where it was drawn. You can't keep moving the line. I'm sorry. That's not arrogant. That's just who they are. And if you don't like it, don't.
Well, he's saying no, the Indy isn't those schools' part. It's still Notre Dame's decision. Each school has their own, whether they're private institutions, elite schools, whatever. Every school still has its own admissions requirement that is specific to academics, and it's not a one size fits all. It's
right. And are we saying
they're
Notre Dame's
all going to
elite?
Right? And I mean, just because and I agree. Like Vanderbilt, yes, is an elite academic school, but from a football standpoint, especially, they also compete in the SEC. So if maybe they're a little bit looser, that's that's what they've got to there's still going to be a lot higher standards there than anywhere else in the SEC. But if they have to loosen it in comparison to other private schools because they've got to compete in the SEC, I can completely understand that. The question is still what Notre Dame's standard is, and the standard that they gave him, he didn't meet, and that's why he's not coming here. So regardless of who he's getting offers from anywhere else, they gave him the standard. He wasn't able to meet it, and they've got to move on now.
That's where we're at, and it is what it is. Like I said, everything was above board between the football program and the admissions. It just was. So, that's just where we're at. Yep.
Interesting question from Kish Squared. He says he's a Penn High School grad. I've always wondered why they aren't a better feeder school for Notre Dame. Curious to get Vince's thoughts on this.
Well, they are a feeder school to Notre Dame. I mean, it's hard to say feeder, right? I mean, there's only so many spots that are going to get into Notre Dame, right? There's what, 8,000 undergrads, so 2,000 spots, let's say, on average, going to the freshman class, and that's for the entire country. And so there are kids that go to Notre Dame every year from Penn, every single year. There's multiple going there this year that I'm aware of. I don't have that list in front of me, but there's plenty of kids that go from Penn.
I think he's talking more specific to football.
If we're talking about athletics, Penn's football program is not on the level of what the other football programs are that are going to Notre Dame. I mean, that just is what it is.
Especially the last few years, it's actually come down a little bit.
So, I mean, if we're talking about football specifically, there's nobody on Notre Dame's football team Penn's football team that I think belong at Notre Dame. I mean, I love those kids. I think they're great kids. But if we're just talking straight from a football standpoint, there's not a whole lot of kids that stack up that should get a Notre Dame offer.
Right. I mean, you still, just because you are a really good, traditionally anyway, again, Penn's been down a little bit more the last few years, but just because you are a traditionally good high school football program does not mean you are cranking out a bunch of Division I, and like high-end Division I guys. There's still a big difference. Now we know Braxton Cave came from there.
Sure. Mike Rosenthal came from there.
There have been a handful of guys over the years. It's just kind of like what we were talking. You still have to meet the requirements.
Right.
Well,
and it's not, and look,
you would think offensive line might be the play, just
they've
because
been small recently. They just haven't been, they haven't met the standard physically. And look, a few years ago when I was not at Penn, but I went to Penn, my son was going there. I wanted to go watch a game, right? So I went to the Cathedral Penn game that was hosted at Penn. So it's 2 years ago when Ronnie Paulus was the quarterback. Okay. Ronnie Paulus was bigger than every one of his offensive linemen. Okay. Ronnie Paulus is a big boy, but he shouldn't be bigger than all of his offensive linemen. And so that kind of tells you where the offensive line has been for Penn over the last couple of years. Now, I think they've gotten better since then. They've gotten a little bit more size, things of that nature. But look, Notre Dame is not an under-recruited team by the Notre Dame coaching staff. Coach Bayless, his son goes there. Coach Freeman's son plays football. Like there's plenty of Notre Dame guy. Paulus obviously is there. His son is a linebacker. You know, Ron Paulus's son's a linebacker. So like coaches are there. They're watching the talent. So it's not like they're under recruited. They're there. They see it. If there were guys to offer, they would do it.
Concur. Decaf 18. I saw this as well. Decaf, Chris Holtman out as a candidate for Notre Dame basketball. And this is something, we brought up last night with Tom Noy, the Ohio State coach, and he has responded to the Dick Weiss tweet that I mentioned with Tom Noy yesterday, saying, I'm staying put at Ohio State. Or basically, I think he came out and said, I am not going to Notre Dame, was actually the more direct comment.
Right.
So,
which,
yeah, and I mean, I agree
okay
with what Tom was saying. Like, I'm not that thrilled about him based on what his current resume looks like.
Yeah.
So,
I wasn't overly enthusiastic about him being the next Notre Dame coach.
Yeah.
And people were like banging the drum that he was the guy, like this was happening. And I just didn't see it.
Which I never got.
Number one, I didn't see it as a good fit. And number two, whoever it was that was saying that he is the guy, I was like, that's not anything I had ever heard. And it just seemed kind of out of left field. Like his name kind of came out of left field and all of a sudden he was the guy. And I don't know that was actually ever true.
Yeah. I don't think it was.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean conversations didn't take place, but I don't think it ever was.
Feeling out period and all of that.
Yeah. David wants to know any rumblings on whether Notre Dame dumps Under Armour and goes with another brand, #losing sleep.
I have heard zero about that, which leads me to believe it's not a top priority right now as to what they're worried about. They need to find a head basketball coach, number one. When does that contract come up? It's usually in July.
I think it's a couple more years.
Yeah. So that's not really a thing. I don't think
it's around the time of the TV contract. Well, I mean, like the TV contract and that I think are around the same time. They might be a year in between them.
I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll hear more about it as it gets closer. I mean, they're not going to make a deal 2 years in advance. I mean, I don't see that being the case. And they're bigger fish to fry at the moment. They're with Under Armour. That's who they've got. That's who they are. And believe me, it'll heat up eventually. And I'm sure that there will be somewhat of a bidding war. I'm sure we all have different dogs in the fight and who, we would want to get that contract. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, there are really only two options outside of
Agreed.
Under Armour. To me, it's like, do you go back to Adidas? Do you go to Nike? Like that. That's the are they going to go to New Balance? Again,
right.
I like New Balance baseball shoes, but New Balance for basketball and football and uniforms, like I think it's Boston College has now, not that thrilled about. Would not be thrilled about that at all. And I don't, it's like you might as well be shopping at Kmart, for what you're doing, to clothe and put on the feet of your athletic teams. And so I think it's got to be one of those two. But what that looks like at this point, I don't know.
Right.
They're going to have to negotiate that. And there has been no word on that. And, everyone it's like, yeah, Puma. I don't see Notre Dame wearing Puma. I just
look, and I think at the end of the day,
Chi-Town is trying to go off and find us another option. I don't see Puma coming around, and everyone's going to have their, a lot of people are going to have their opinions about Nike, but I can guarantee you this: Notre Dame will not care. It's going to come down to dollars and cents, is what it's going to come down.
I honestly think it comes down to two. I think it's going to come down to Nike or Under Armour. They're either going to stick with Under Armour or they go to Nike. If they go to Nike, I cannot even express to you how much I do not want them to go to the Jordan brand. If you're going to go to Nike, just stick with Nike, flat out. Don't
Right.
go Jordan Brand. Ugh.
Kids love them, though.
I
Kids love 'em.
know, but they're not making decisions based on that. I mean, and no matter what anybody says, they're not. Kids are not like, well, I'm not going to Notre Dame because they don't have Jordan Brand. Like that's not a thing. That's
Right.
just not. So it's more about everybody else who wants to buy the gear.
But I can tell you this: I don't know how much, like research Notre Dame did when they negotiated this deal with Under Armour in terms of, like having Under Armour bring in basketball shoes and football shoes and baseball shoes and whatever other sport and actually doing functional tests of those
Sure.
shoes. But I've said this before. The players hate the shoes, and it's not because of the way they look. It's because they hurt their feet and they do not like playing in them.
Yeah.
So, like if Notre Dame sticks with Under Armour, it will be at the sake of what the student athletes actually like in terms of what's functional, what is good for them to play in. I'm not even talking about what looks good and what logo is on the jersey or whatever else. They don't like playing in those shoes.
That's fair. And they need to take into account what the kids want. I mean, that's the kids that are already here, by the way. I'm not talking about recruits. I'm talking about the functionality of the shoes.
Big Baller Brand. Are those still around? Like, are they still making those?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they are.
Oh man, I haven't heard those brought up in a while, actually.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Yes. All right. So we did that one. You want to do a Bears? No, here, Jeff Brown question. I like this. What do you think chances are that Patello ends up being the impact player that some are predicting he will? Will Sneed and Kali see significant playing time this season if they gain more trust?
Well, that's one of the things that we talked about a couple of days ago about the things that, we need to see in spring. I need to see what the linebacker rotation is going to look like to a degree. I mean, it's spring. We're not going to get all the answers, but are those younger guys going to get a legitimate opportunity to start? Because every starting linebacker that was here last year is back this year.
Yep.
So how do you play that as a coach? You just open it up,
and they wouldn't have told him to come back,
right?
If they didn't have intention on playing him to whatever extent.
Exactly. So what does that look like? Are they even going to get a legit opportunity to get on the field? Talking about Sneed and Kali? Yeah, I think they should. I just don't know, though. I don't know enough about Al Golden and how he operates. I think he went the safe route last year, and he had the guys in there that he could trust, and that he knew were going to be in the right spot and all of that.
On the trust tree.
We'll see what happens with these younger guys, because these guys all have another year under their belts. They're not considered rookies anymore. So are they going to get more trust from the coaching staff? We're going to see.
He likes smart guys. He commented on how smart these guys were from the day he walked in the door. And along with that, how much he could put on these smart guys. I think he likes, we've talked about, scheme versus, just, playing and all that different stuff. And, personally, I think that he puts, especially the linebackers, he puts too much on them. Yep. But I guess the bigger question is going to be, with a year under their belt, year in the system, year of playing in it, and now coming into spring, will these veterans, will their play elevate because they have a better knowledge base and they just know where they're going to be, and it allows them to play faster? That to me is going to be, because I could see, Kali and Sneed. Can I see them getting more playing time? Sure, but it's going to depend on, some specifics, it's more, to me, it's more about Leafau and Kaiser than it is Bertrand. I think Bertrand is completely safe with where he is.
Yeah.
At Mike, it's going to be about what happens at those other two positions and whether one of these other two guys is able to unseat them.
Sure, I agree. I think the most solidified person would be Bertrand. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and then as far as Patello is concerned, does he have the ability to be that breakout guy? Absolutely. The problem is we just haven't seen him enough to really know if that's going to be the case. I like what I've seen so far. I mean, the kid's a dynamic athlete. There's no doubt about it. My concern has always been not just can you trust him on the field, but can you trust him off the field? Now, I haven't personally heard of any issues over the past year plus, which that's a great sign. But we'll see. I mean, that's the biggest issue for me is he's got to get it together, on the field and off the field. Maybe he has, and if he has, then he absolutely has the ability to become that guy.
Mm-hmm. We're not Marshall. Assuming special teams takes a dip this year, offense improves significantly, and defense is a push. Will Notre Dame have a better than 9-4 record?
Absolutely, no question. Because if the offense, going by what this says, right? We're just going off of what this says. Defense is a push. The defense was what, top 16 team in Division I last year? Okay, check. Special teams takes a little bit of a dip. Okay, but offense improves significantly. That means you're scoring way more points.
Right?
Yeah, they're going to be better than 9-4. Absolutely, because they didn't win the Marshall game because they couldn't score. Right? They didn't win the Ohio State game because they couldn't score. They didn't win the Stanford game because they couldn't score. I mean, yes, absolutely, they will be better than 9-4. No doubt about that.
Well, and I mean, just look at it. 9-4 is 13 games, which means a bowl game is factored in there. So if they're in a bowl game with they'd be 9-3 during the regular season, or I guess they could
going to
theoretically be 8-4. Like they're going to beat. They're if they're in a lower tier bowl again, I give them like an 80% chance of winning. Just starting with that. And just all those other things that you talked about. Special teams is a little bit worse. Now that's, the question, special teams takes a dip is what he said, so how far is that dip? Are they fumbling kickoffs? Are they not recovering onside?
It's a big
where
difference.
is the dip? I think that there's still going to be a fundamentally sound special teams.
I agree.
Unit. They might not block 20 kicks this year, but I think there's still going to be a pretty good special teams groupings all the way around. And we've talked about the fact that the kicking, you expect the kicking to be better under Biaggi based on his kicking background and the track record he has with kickers.
And he was a kicker.
Stuff. So yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what I said, his kicking background. Yeah. Right. So I feel much better than a 9-4 record. Again, it should come down to 3 games this season. All that said, the bigger question, other than just special teams is a little bit worse, offense significantly better, defense is a push, are they just going to have a game where they lay an egg against a team they shouldn't lay an egg against?
Right.
That's still the biggest question to me.
Absolutely. But I think the biggest disappointment from last year was the offense not being able to score because they didn't have a trigger man that could push the ball down the field and make plays when he needed to. And that is not going to be the case this year. So if it's 9-4, man, I'm going to be on suicide watch from a fan standpoint. Like, that is not acceptable.
Revolver 6238. Do you see Notre Dame accepting undergrad transfers in the future?
Not in the near future. Not with the way they do things. They're just not going to, because they don't want to bring anybody in who is going to be behind in their graduation path. And if they get to be sophomores at another school and they come in to Notre Dame, they're going to have a difficult time staying on track.
The only chance I think it's going to work is you're going to have to take, just like Brandon Joseph came from Northwestern. It's going to be from a similar academic school, whether it's Stanford, Vanderbilt, TCU.
And even that was a stretch, right?
Right. I mean, but my point is, guys who are going to those schools are going to have a more similar academic focus compared to what's going on at Notre Dame. Whereas if you're going to a Kansas State or, just wherever it happens to be.
Sure.
It's the reason it doesn't happen is because Notre Dame is very vigorous. There's a reason these kids get on campus in summer before they even, as freshmen, and they're going to summer school before the fall semester even starts of their freshman year, because they put them on this 3-year track. And to me, that's probably the biggest part of why it is so hard for them to take these, other guys, and again, I know it comes down to the individual schools, with the, like the school of business and, engineer, whatever it happens to be, it's up to the individual deans of those schools and whether or not they're going to accept them. I think you have a much better chance if you're coming from one of those other places like a Stanford or a Vanderbilt or wherever it happens to be. And if you're not at one of those places, because of the way Notre Dame pushes the academics again before they even officially get in for their fall semester, everyone else is just off track right off the bat because of where Notre Dame wants you to be on course to graduate in 3 years.
The only way I see Notre Dame accepting undergraduate transfers, if I'm being honest, is if it's after their freshman year. Because when you're a freshman, you're taking a lot of the same level courses that you take at other schools.
Prereqs,
right?
yeah.
You're not taking major specific classes until you get to be a sophomore, usually, right? Depending on how many things you did in the summer and blah, 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 blah. So could they take a freshman, maybe even a transfer after the first semester? So like a spring transfer of a freshman? Yes, I could see that happening. Absolutely. But once they get to be sophomores and juniors, I just don't. And again, I'll say this. That's the way it's going to be at Notre Dame. The louder you complain about it, the more it's going to fall on deaf ears. And you need to find somebody else to root for if that's all you're looking for. Because that's not who Notre Dame is, and that's not who they're going to be. So I don't know what to tell the people that get upset that they're not going to take sophomore and junior level transfers. It's just never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
That's just where we are. Whether we agree with it or not, it's not going to happen. And to complain about it, you're just wasting your oxygen.
Right. And then, we were talking about it, Tom and I were talking about it last night. And like you look at the women's team, for example, they've had some undergrad transfers who have come in here over the past few years. Like Kylie Watson right now, she's a junior. She still has, 2 years of eligibility left. So she wasn't even a grad transfer. But my argument, just like what we're talking about, it's like these guys, whether they're football players or men's basketball players, they come in the door to college and they are, from the minute they get there, their goal, whether it's completely realistic or not, their goal is to get paid to play.
Yes.
Football guys want to play in the NFL, and the basketball guys obviously want to play in the NBA. The academics, for a vast majority of these guys, especially state school guys, no offense, I went to a state school, so it's not an insult. I'm just saying it takes a back seat, and I think that the women tend to have their academics more in line, and that's why it's probably a little bit easier for a women's basketball player to come in.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because
absolutely.
It's different. Come in the door. Yes, it is. All right. Let me see. A couple women's basketball questions on that subject. Chi-Town, how far do you see the Irish finishing, and can you make an argument Notre Dame can beat South Carolina at home? Because I'm having a hard time convincing myself. And D-Rock wants to know Notre Dame women's basketball Sweet 16 with or without Olivia Miles. It ends there versus 2 seed Maryland. Do you want me to take this first?
Well, yeah, you go ahead. You're the expert.
I would have had a hard time this team versus South Carolina. Like at full strength, I would give this team at least a chance to compete with South Carolina. But they are just so good. They've won 50 straight games coming into this tournament. They're so good. Like I said, I like the path that this regional gives them to have a chance to get to the Elite Eight, which is where they would face South Carolina to get to the Final Four. I like that path in this region, but the problem is you just run into the monster in South Carolina when you get to the Elite Eight. And then the other question was about Maryland. I mean, they played Maryland. It came right down to the wire the first time. A buzzer beater shot that Maryland hit to win by 2 points. And Maryland's been playing really well lately, but like I would like Notre Dame's chances in that game, which would give them a chance then, to get out of the Sweet 16, go to the Elite Eight and play that South Carolina game. South Carolina's tough, man. They're just so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And they earned it. Don't get me wrong. They earned it, but they're playing basically on their home floor. So, I mean, that's tough too, because you're playing against the home team. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's not the be all end all, but it certainly doesn't help.
Exactly right. All right, we've got a few more questions stacked up here. I think we will try to address them in rapid fire.
Okay. The
This is
one I wanted to bring up, but I don't know the answer about Marcus Freeman's buyout from Cincinnati, so I can't even really.
yeah, no clue.
I have no idea. None. All I know is he wasn't going back to Cincinnati, so it didn't matter what his buyout was going to be. He was out of there. So
Yeah, no clue. You ready for rapid fire?
let's do it, baby.
All right,
Rapid fire.
I'll tell you what. Let's start with a listener question for
Okay.
rapid fire. Shannon, true or false? If the Notre Dame offensive line had been performing to their success later in the year during the Marshall game, then Tyler Buckner doesn't get hurt and the season has a different outcome.
I will say true, and I will expound on that and say that if they were playing to their later success in the season, they probably beat Ohio State too. So they just could not move the football offensively against Ohio State, and they didn't do well obviously against Marshall either. So if they were playing the way they were the second half of the season in those games, absolutely, I think they beat both of those teams. And Tyler Buckner being the quarterback all year, they beat Stanford too.
The problem I have with that, I guess the argument goes to if the offensive line is better, then they've got a lead against Marshall. And so then Tyler Buckner doesn't need to run, toward the end of the Marshall game. And therefore he doesn't get hurt when he gets tackled against Marshall. That argument, okay, I guess I can see that. But the problem is he was going to run at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He was running a lot those first couple games. And that's the kind of play that you can get hurt on any play. Sure. Running, whether the offensive line was better or not. So there's no doubt. And I agree. If the offensive line had played better against Ohio State, I think that they have a really good chance to win that game. And it doesn't come down to one interception, or not one interception, but one stupid zero blitz that turned into a touchdown.
Yeah.
For Ohio State, and D-Rock Irish is right. The offensive line was atrocious the first 4 games, but then it turned around. But it's hard for me to go back and sort of, redo the Buckner injury just because of the offensive line, just because, again, you get tackled on any play. So Chi-Town asks, will you be calling the Notre Dame games in Greenville? Well, that's assuming they get there, but the answer, of course, is yes. I'll be with them throughout the NCAA tournament as long as they are playing in the NCAA tournament. Okay, we already did that one. So let's go to a question that we already had lined up for today. Right. Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame football player you most want to see live during the spring is blank.
I'm sorry. I know that this is such a easy answer. And some people probably want something, out of the nowhere, like, who's Vince looking at? It's Sam Hartman. I'm sorry. I want to see how he throws the football in a Notre Dame uniform to Notre Dame's receivers. That's what I'm excited to see. I like the glitz and the glamour and all of that. And I like offense and I like quarterback play. And so I want to see how he looks in a Notre Dame uniform.
All right. Well, I was wondering where you would go with this. Mine, because the guy's been playing for 5 years, so it's not like we haven't seen him on film. Mine is Tobias Merriweather, because I want to see if Sam Hartman, how quickly he is able to, make, I guess, legitimate receivers out of this young group of talented wide receivers Notre Dame has that Tobias is at the front of. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Tobias. I want to see what it looks like with him catching passes from Sam Hartman with a legitimate quarterback throwing him the football this year and running the offense. That's what I want to see. And I mean, really, you can throw in the rest of the receivers behind him. But again, Tobias is obviously at the front of the list. So
my secondary group that I'm going to be paying attention to is the guard position. Like who is going to take those? I mean, that's
battles and
that's going to be the next. Like, how does Billy Schrouth look? How does Rocco Spindler look? How does Kristofic look? Like those 3 guys specifically. Can somebody take hold of those 2 guard spots? Like those would be the ones that I'm excited to see. I mean,
Shannon was obviously here last night because Jesse's would be Rocco Spindler.
It would
I'm
be.
still shocked that Jesse took Rocco with the first round pick
So was
of the
I.
spring breakout player offensive draft.
So was I.
Yes. Speaking of which, Vince, you trolled me last night. You weren't even part of the show.
I know.
You're sitting in the chat and you trolled me saying Andrew Kristofic not eligible to be a breakout player this spring. So my question to you is, how do you define a potential breakout player candidate, Vince DiDario?
To me, a breakout player is somebody that hasn't
You're
had
already
significant.
wrong.
I know. You had look. Any argument you're going to have against what I have to say here is absolutely accurate. I can't even argue with it. But for me, I see when I think of a breakout player, I think of somebody that hasn't had significant snaps, hasn't been on the field, hasn't started games, something like that. So Andrew Kristofic doesn't fit in my category. Your argument is 1,000% good because I see where you're coming from.
I noticed you weren't chiming in after I was responding to it last night.
So. No, I didn't respond because I was told by other people that I had to put a super chat in order to talk, and so I stopped talking. But no, look. I get where you're coming from. He was an injury starter. I mean, he started because somebody was injured. He didn't. I don't want to say he didn't earn a starting spot, but he wasn't one of the 5 starters, right? I mean, he wasn't. And so a breakout for him would be he's been named a starter, and then he goes out and he dominates.
Well, yeah, at the very least, like he's kicking butt, and he's like people are saying, man, Kristofic is looking really good, and whatever. Like you haven't heard that talk about not that people have talked poorly about him, but my point is he started one game last season, and that was the game that Jarrett Patterson, missed because of the injury, the Ohio State game, and it's not that he played badly in that game, and he played more than that the year before that, but that was also a makeshift offensive line that I think I counted like 9 different guys started on the line 2 years ago, so like, and again, even though he started more games in 2021 than 2022, it didn't stick. It's, he didn't there was no carryover. It didn't become a starter. So like, to me, you've got 2 guard spots open. This is opportunity for a guy like him. It's like, I was thinking about this as an analogy. Like you've got September call-ups in baseball, and those guys might play, they might even start some games when they get called up, but like the next year, they're still eligible for rookie of the year, So like there's a difference between playing and I think, being a guy that people are talking about. And I think that part of being a breakout guy is like there's buzz around you, like people are talking about you heading into the summer. So
fair.
That's kind of my 2 cents on it. Okay. So the Indianapolis Colts are expected to release Matt Ryan. And in the meantime, there's all this Aaron Rodgers stuff. And I mean, man, today was an Aaron Rodgers day of Aaron Rodgers day. And all this Rodgers to the Jets stuff going on. Should the Colts have been bigger players, considering where they are right now, in trying to get Aaron Rodgers this offseason?
I mean, it's so hard for me to remove my utter hatred for Aaron Rodgers when I answer these types of questions, Sean. Because my gut instinct.
Should they have tried to get a future Hall of Fame quarterback who still wants to play NFL football?
No, because he's a headache, and I wouldn't want that. I would not want him around my organization. I just wouldn't. I think he's more bother than he's worth at this point in his career. Okay, so. No, and they've done the retread of future Hall of Fame quarterbacks the last few years, and it really hasn't worked out, real well, right? I think you could make the argument that Rivers was, I think he worked out. I think he was the bridge you were looking for.
Decent for a year.
Yeah, right.
They obviously needed more after that.
And I was shocked, to be honest with you, that Matt Ryan was such a failure in Indianapolis.
Me too.
I really am. I thought that he would be much better. And he got benched like 3 different times or something. It was not good. Right. And so they're going to cut him, blah, 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 blah. So no, I don't think they should have gone after Rodgers. I think they have to figure out who their quarterback of the future is. And they just need to ride that wave at this point, just go for it. And so I think they should have been more involved in moving up in the draft if they think that one of those two guys is your franchise quarterback, because at 4, you're not going to get the 2 best guys.
Right. And they obviously feel like they, I don't know if this played into them not trading up with the Bears to begin with, but the Colts were one of the first teams that was being talked about moving up to get that number 1 pick, trading with the Bears. Does that mean that they're not that confident in this year's quarterback class? Well, again, if not, then if you're not confident enough to trade up to number 1 to get one of these guys, you're certainly not going to be happy with what you get that lands to you at number 4. So you're probably not going to waste your time going there. But what you do know is this is going to be the 7th straight year that they've had a different starting quarterback to open the season. It goes Scott Tolzien, Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, then Phillip Rivers, then Carson Wentz, and of course Matt Ryan last year. I've spent the last couple of days saying, I'm really not sure about Lamar Jackson and, whether or not I would want Lamar Jackson on my team. And it's not because I don't like Lamar Jackson. It's because of as I've said, you've got to rebuild your whole offense around Lamar Jackson. Yeah. What I wasn't thinking about was the fact that Steichen, the new head coach, just came from Philadelphia, where he has a quarterback fairly similar in style to Lamar Jackson, of course, in Jalen Hurts. And and he's got Jonathan Taylor and he's got a solid offensive line. It's like at this point, if you're the Colts, what are you going to do? Because, are you going to try to that division is very winnable if you've got a quarterback, like a true franchise quarterback at the helm. And, you'd have to pay Lamar Jackson a lot. You're going to have to give up that number 4 pick and probably another first-round pick to get him. But I'm starting, again, like when you look at Steichen's background and the offense that he just ran and Lamar Jackson, I think that there are a lot worse probably options for the Indianapolis Colts than Lamar Jackson, the more I think about it. But, again, you're going to have to give up something to do it. And that seems to be part of the Colts' problem as well, is they're not willing to give up draft capital to go out and make moves. They don't want to spend a lot of money. They don't want to make moves. And in the meantime, they're stuck with crappy quarterback play.
Yeah. It's not good in Indy right now. I mean, they got rid of their best corner. I mean, yes, they're good defensively, but
I'm happy they gave up their best corner because
I know because they went to the Cowboys. I know. I saw that. I saw that.
Very happy about that. Fill in the blank. After seeing the Bears land their massive trade haul from Carolina for the number 1 draft pick, they should do blank for Lovie Smith for his part in getting them that number 1 pick to begin with.
I think he's on the short list for a Super Bowl ring when the Bears finally get one. I think that's if this draft and the subsequent drafts lead to that, I think he should be involved.
I think you're absolutely right. Like at the very least, they should make him some kind of special assistant, if he's not working for somebody else. But you're right. If they win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, based on what they get out of this trade that they made, Lovie Smith should absolutely get a ring. And for anyone who forgot, remember the Colts were actually involved in that, and that was in Indy, 4th and 20. They score a touchdown with seconds left, and then they could have kicked to tie the game, but instead they go for 2 for the win, and they won, and that ended up giving the Bears the number 1 pick.
It's a great day. It's a great day.
It's just like I love like Lovie just sticking it to the Texans on his way out of town. It's like apparently the owner was standing on the sideline and like the look on his face while all this is going on. I would have loved to see that. I would have loved it. All right. So Tommy's got a question. How good is Elkhart football? They're coming to play my high school, Massillon, this upcoming season. FYI, that game is September 8th. Y'all should come and bring Jesse since he's only an hour or so. Well, Elkhart not that good last year. They've kind of gone downhill. After consolidating 2 schools as well, everyone thought they were going to be the next big power in this area. They were good for 1 year, and it's kind of haven't been as good the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been iffy, and I'm happy that they're playing Massillon on the 8th because then they play Penn the following week. And they're probably going to get beat up pretty good. And I'm okay with that because Elkhart
Yeah.
and Penn are pretty much the local rivals around here because now Elkhart is the same size as Penn, right? So that'll be a home game for Penn. So I'll be working that night, T-Gun. So I can't make the trip to Ohio.
Yeah, and I'll be doing Mishawaka football
Right.
again this fall unless something
Right.
changes. So I'm in the same boat.
Which the Mishawaka Penn rivalry heats back up this year.
It does.
I'm very excited about.
I'll be out at Penn, and I'll be leaning on you to make sure we've got a good connection.
Gotcha, buddy. I'm gonna try to get out of my my duty, and maybe I can call the game with you. We'll see. I don't know.
Ooh,
I don't know.
That would be interesting if they let you do that.
I don't think they would, but we'll see. We shall see. But no, Elkhart is not great this year, or they haven't been great. Maybe they will take a big step in the right direction, but Massillon should take that one pretty easily.
Yeah. So we talked the other day about North Carolina's decision not to play in the NIT this year after they didn't make the NCAA tournament. Turns out the team voted not to play. That's according to some of the dads of players on the team, what they told USA Today, that the team voted not to play in the NIT. Are you good with that, Vince?
I'm not good with that because I will double down on the fact that I'm upset that they didn't go and play because I have an issue with the culture of the program if these guys are voting to not continue to play with each other. Like I've got an issue with the whole situation with the way things are going over in Carolina. So I double down on the fact that I'm disappointed that they voted that way because obviously something's not good down there.
I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. But at the same time, it's not like you haven't heard of, like 500 football teams or, like I think just a couple years back, like didn't Notre Dame turn down the NIT, because the team basically voted, not that they didn't want to play either. So
yeah, they did.
It's not unprecedented. It's happened. But
sure,
I think the bigger thing with North Carolina is it just kind of seems like sour grapes. And I agree with the culture, especially like when we were talking about Tom Penders and all the stuff he was saying about them, about how they don't play hard and all this different stuff. Like, I don't know. I guess we're definitely older school guys. It's like, you want to play, you should want to play and all that.
That's true.
Different kind of stuff. But it is North Carolina. And like, again, like the sour grapes aspect, it basically comes off as North Carolina saying we're too good for the NIT, so we're not going to play in the NIT. Yeah. So
I get that.
In general, I would rather leave it up to a vote of the team than just the coaches making that decision. Like you guys vote, we'll go with what you want to go with. But the administration signed off on it as well.
Yeah.
I
get the team having a vote and all that. I guess I'm just disappointed in the way that it turned out because they can say that they're too good for the NIT, but are you? Because you didn't make the NCAA tournament, so are you too good for the NIT?
Very true. Very true. All right, I want to see. We are not Marshall. Which happens first, Notre Dame National Championship or Bears Super Bowl victory?
That's the easiest question that we've had all night long. It's Notre Dame National Championship. Bar none. Like, I can get excited about some things about the Bears and all that. I will be the last one to get in line to say that the Bears are going to win a Super Bowl. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think Notre Dame right now is much closer to a national championship than the Bears are to a Super Bowl. But who knows? We'll see what these picks turn into.
Sure.
Benjamin wants to know, do you like what the Bears are doing with their trade partners? And if you were the Bears, who's your first pick?
Whoever the best offensive lineman is on the board when it gets to number 9, that's who I would pick because that is the biggest issue for the Bears was their offensive line. They need to shore it up. I was upset when they didn't get McGlinchey. You need an offensive lineman, period. So that's who I would go with if they're still at 9 when the timer starts ticking.
Yeah. I'll go with your answer on that one.
and look,
I don't know about Jackson Smith and Jigba. They definitely need to get better in the offensive line, and they have a poor history of where they take offensive linemen. And I think that you could really anchor that line with where they're picking right now at number 9, assuming they don't trade down again. So.
Yeah, no, and look, I will never claim to know as much about the NFL draft as our buddy Ryan, but whoever the best lineman is, that's who I want. And I'll ask Ryan when we get closer. Who should Bears pick? You know.
All right, CBS lead college basketball announcer Jim Nantz calling his last NCAA tournament this year. The Final Four is in Houston. Nantz is a University of Houston alum, and I guess he has used the word "we" when referring to the top-seeded Cougars in interviews, as in, we need to do this, we need to do that, we're number one, whatever. So are you good with that, Vince?
So I have been on record that I can't stand when people say we. And I blame you for that because you're the one that told me that announcers aren't supposed to do that. And I took that to heart back in 2004 when you told me that. I took it to heart.
Right?
I have zero problem with him doing this because he's an alum of the school. I have zero issue with it because it is we. He went to school there. He has paper on the wall from that
to an
school.
extent, but he is still supposed to be impartial when he is on the air talking about what you're saying when he's calling the games. You're saying when he's calling the games.
Yes.
But outside of that,
it's we all day, baby.
See, I don't think I say we when it comes to Kansas.
You don't. You never do.
Okay.
But I would give you a pass if you did.
If I did. Okay.
Yeah.
See, like, I don't say we when it comes to Kansas. I don't say we, like with the Cowboys, Notre Dame, whatever. Well, I don't say it.
You never played for the Cowboys. So.
That's that's fair. But I'm just saying, like, of my the teams that I have.
Well, and you and I have done high school sports together for a long time. I don't say we when we cover Marion because that's where I went to high school. And I won't say we if I'm covering the game that has Penn involved because I worked there. Like, that's not what I would do. But I have no problem with Jim Nantz when he's just talking about the team. I don't have any issue. If he's calling the game, that's different though.
That's exactly. I can live with that because I think, these are more like interviews either with podcasts or radio or whatever. And again, he is an alum, he paid money to go to the University of Houston. So he belongs to the University of Houston. So I guess I can see that. Sean, you can say we when reading off my great question. Sincerely, we are not Marshall. And we will wrap it up on that tonight.
There it is.
Because again, Vince has birthday shenanigans to get to. So
yes, sir.
We've come in under time. You've got 2 minutes to spare. It looks like here at the end of the show.
That is not like us, Sean. So
that's right.
I'm excited.
All right, we've got more, of course, tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk, and then I'll be out Friday. I need to address with the boss what's going on Friday because I've got a basketball game at 3:30 in the afternoon. Kind of interferes with typical start time of our show.
Yes, it does.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks for being here tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow. Happy birthday, Dylan DeDario, and we'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.